Hello and welcome to the webinar. My name is Josh McDaniel and I work with the Wildland Fire Lessons Learned Center, and I want to thank everyone for coming. The webinar we're having today covers a very important topic in wildfire management, and I think that's reflected in the amount of people who've registered and have showed up for this webinar. Right before we started here, I took a look and 483 people have registered for this webinar. And that's the most. We've been doing these webinars for about 3 or 4 years now, and that is breaks the old record by quite a bit. So this is obviously a topic that has a lot of interest in the field. It's an important topic in wildfire management, and I'm glad you guys are here. I think we have a great panel that's going to provide some interesting perspectives on the issues of heat illness and rhabdomyolysis, and so I'll stop talking here real quick and we'll get on with it because we have a lot to cover. First, I want to give a few details on how the webinar is going to work. First off, if you want to ask a question, and I'm sure you do, you have a questions box down at the bottom of your control panel, and you can type your question in there. After the 4 people have presented, we will have a question and answer session, and we'll just work our way through the queue. So the quicker you get your questions in, the better chance we have of getting to it. With this many people here, I imagine we probably aren't going to be able to get to all the questions. We'll try to get to as many of them as we can and see if there's a way to work out responding to some of those questions later on. The webinar also is being recorded, and we will post a link to that recording after the webinar on the Advances in Fire Practice webpage. And if you look on the screen right now, there's the link there. That's a tough one to follow, but it's on the Wildland Fire Lessons Learned Center site. It's under the resources section of the Wildland Fire Lessons Learned Center site, and we post those on the Lessons Learned Center's YouTube channel, but the link will be right there on the Advanced Fire Practice, so you can pass that on to anyone you think might be interested. Okay, so on to today. I'm going to introduce the four presenters now, and first up is going to be Joe Dimitrovich. And Joe is a wildland firefighter with a PhD in exercise science who has experience conducting field studies of wildland firefighters. He's a project leader at the Missoula Technology and Development Center. After Joe, Dalen Parks is going to speak. Dalen's coming up on his 25th season in fire. He says he's worked all over the country in many different regions, and is now the assistant forest FMO for Nebraska's National Forests and Grasslands. After Dalen, Ben Jacobs is going to speak. Ben is a 12-year veteran fuels management specialist at Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks. And Ben and Dalen are going to give perspectives on incidents involving some of these problems, and I think that's going to be really interesting. And then after Ben, Jennifer Simons is going to speak. And Jennifer practiced family practice from 1994 to 1997, then practiced urgent care medicine in Boise from 97 to 2013. And since February of 2013, Jennifer has been the medical officer for the Forest Service, Fire and Aviation Management. Okay. Here, forgot to put their mugshots up there. So there's the folks that are going to be speaking to us today. So the idea here was to get some information from experts on some of these problems in terms of from an exercise and physiology standpoint and from a medical standpoint, but then also talk to people who have experience with these problems in the field, from the person who's experienced these types of incidents, and that's Dalen, to a supervisor of a crew member that has experienced these types of problems. So we look forward to it, and with that, I will hand it over to Joe.
Well, thanks everybody for coming and dragging yourself away from the NCAA tournament games going on. Let us know if we need to give updates throughout the presentation. So what is external heat illness, compartment syndrome, and rhabdomyolysis? So the first question I get is what are these things, and a little bit behind them. So when we look at rhabdomyolysis is actually when the muscle breaks down and all the components that are stored within the muscle leak out into the body. And from that can be minor to very severe, which can lead to kidney failure. And so that is what rhabdomyolysis is breakdown of the muscle, and those internal components leak out into the body where they shouldn't be. Compartment syndrome is a condition where the muscles are stored within compartments in the body, and compartment syndrome is when those compartments get too much pressure in them and the muscles cannot expand and contract any longer, and a lot of times they lose blood flow. And when you lose blood, you lose oxygen and nutrients to the muscles, and those muscles can start to die. Heat injury is a whole nother can. There's many different things involved with heat injuries or heat illness. They can be very mild as heat cramps, heat exhaustion, to potentially fatal heat stroke, where you have a core body temperature above 140 degrees Fahrenheit with an altered mental status. The key thing to remember with these heat injuries is that heat stroke can develop without any prior signs of heat exhaustion. So you could have an employee that's completely fine, and the next thing you know, they have heat stroke without showing any signs or symptoms prior to potentially just going down. So that's kind of a basic definition of these three conditions. When we look at the numbers of heat stress on the general population, these numbers are from the Centers for Disease Control, 250 to 400 people each year die from this condition. So in the military, which has similar work to what we do in wildland fire, this study in 2010, there were 2,576 heat-related injuries, and out of those, 311 were heat stroke. And with that, heat stroke has about a 5 to 6% fatality rate. In wildland firefighters, we've had 2 federal deaths, but we've had many more near misses. Some of those we don't know about, but Missoula Technology Development Center, along with our other federal partners, are trying to work on different studies to have a better understanding of the cases of heat stress in the wildland fire agencies. For rhabdomyolysis, there was 12,220 cases of external rhabdo a few years ago. In the military, out of people in basic training, there was only less than 1% were diagnosed with external rhabdo. So it's a very rare condition, and it's actually 300 to 400% higher in the general population than the military. They feel that this is due to fitness levels of our military compared to our general population and what activities they're doing. However, in wildland firefighters, we don't have a lot of cases, but when we do have cases, they tend to be very severe, which Dalen will talk about later on. So when we look here at the Lessons Learned Center 2013 Incident Review, we can see that from this, we have rhabdo, compartment syndrome, and heat-related injuries. And that counted to 26% of the medical incidents this past year, with rhabdomyolysis being the highest. So when we look at the numbers, we're seeing that rhabdomyolysis is a lot more prevalent than some of these other conditions. And we'll talk about some signs and symptoms and what to look for in that later on in the talk. So are rhabdo and heat stress linked? That's a big question we get in the medical profession. And there are some studies out there that show that prior muscle injury can affect heat storage and heat stress in subsequent exercise. And so what they're seeing is that when the body has an injury of some sort, the heat stress will go up in exercising that goes on later on. So if somebody has a PT injury or has some sort of injury fighting fire, then their heat stress will go up in subsequent activity. However, with that, this data from the military shows with prior heat stress, incidence of rhabdomyolysis can also increase. So right now, we're not sure which came first, the heat stress or the rhabdo, or if they both can increase the risk of the other happening once one has occurred. So there is some data to show that these two conditions potentially are linked. However, we're not sure which one causes the other, or if they both can increase the rate of the other one. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dalen to talk about his rhabdo case that he experienced a few years ago.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm not going to bore you with PowerPoint. I don't have nothing to present. I'm just going to tell you my story, and hopefully you can deal with my Kermit the Frog and crack voice. It can be quite strenuous listening to that in itself. Basically, I'm just going to get to the short and skinny of it and answer any questions, and I'll try to be as brief as possible. 2011 fire season for me was very active. Went out 5 times. Every single one of them was a 14-day assignment. I believe I had a 120 or 2 21-dayers in there too. So I was quite busy, and they ranged from engine dozer boss up to division soup. I actually did division more than anything that year, but I also did dozer and engine. My last assignment was Central Texas. I did a dozer boss detail. 14 days. Pretty hot down there, a couple hard days, a lot of fires. Last 3 days, though, I was basically, staged in the hotel. Last 3 days were really easy days, really nice. Nothing abnormal came up, typical heat, typical things, just working through a busy fire season. Last day of the Texas assignment, I flew home. I got home around 1600. Right around there, I know it was right before 6. I had to go look at a puppy I was getting. Everything was normal, did the whole day shuffling around airports and stuff. Got home. Minnesota had a big fire takeoff, I believe 3 days before, and I don't want to insult anybody and say the wrong name of the fire, but it was a big one. My pack test was expiring. I wanted to go to Minnesota. They needed people. So the first day of R&R, I actually took the pack test on that day, and this is the second time in my career I've done pack tests on R&R day. And I was not the only individual that day on R&R taking a pack test. So it was something that, now looking back, maybe it shouldn't have happened, but sometimes, what reality is sometimes you kind of bend your rules a little bit. Like I said, very active season, everything I did normal, ate a normal meal, drank my water. The next day, the pack test, nice day, it was 50 degrees. I never eat breakfast on the days I do pack test. I just get up and start pounding water. I took a whole bunch of water. I show up for the pack test, do the JHA, do the briefing, look at the video and all that good stuff we have to do. I drive out to the track, which was was a high school track. And it's like it's a perfect day. I want to say it's 50 degrees or right around 50. Sort of high RH, but it was just absolutely perfect. Cloudy, one of those days you just enjoy taking it if you can enjoy taking a pack test. Now here's one thing I do. I have done for the last 8 years, and I continue to do it today on my pack test, is I wear ankle supports, knee supports, and I don't wrap my shins anymore, but I used to wrap neoprene around my shins because not for support, but to keep my legs warm, to kind of cut down my shin splints I've had for the last 15 years of taking the pack test, which is the only time I get shin splints. And that's the only time I wear any kind of knee, ankle, or shin support is when I take a pack test. I basically use those support mechanisms only when I practice for the test and when I actually take it, and then once I'm done taking it, they go right back in the closet to wait till next year. So that's just something I've had to do because of the pace of the pack test and how it works. I don't need supports doing my regular job, living my regular life, hunting, nothing. I don't need no supports except for when I practice and take the pack test. So like I said, the neoprene supports for my shins are just to keep my legs warm to help alleviate the pain of the shin splints. So anyway, started the pack test. It was going real good. I was walking with a good buddy of mine. I had a good pace going. I mean, wasn't drinking water. I had a lot before the pack test. I'm just not a good person to walk and try to drink water because half of it gets on my, I drink about a quarter of the water I try to drink just taking a pack test. So I usually just dump it on myself or just don't drink it because I drink a lot before I take it. Now, with that being said, I did take a swig of an energy drink during the pack test, and when I say swig, I took a swig, handed the can off, and you could have put that can, gave it to somebody else, and they would have thought they had a brand new can of energy drink, because I took just a very small swig. And I had no energy drinks that day, before the test, or the preceding 2 weeks, because I just stopped drinking those about 3 years ago, because they're going to kill you, and so I just stopped drinking them. About lap 8 or 9, and I mean, I'm smoking this thing, and I'm not even trying to. I'm just walking my buddy who has a good pace, and I just felt good. Everything was just going good. In fact, when I started lap 11, I had 2 laps left. I was out on 40-minute pace, which I haven't broke 40, I think, since 96, 97, 98, whenever in the pack test. I've always been a 41, 42, 43 guy. And so I'm just walking. Everything's good. We start doing lap 11. We get all the way around to about 40 yards from the end of lap 11, and I fall down. Describe it any more than that. I just went down. I actually thought, because I had no pain, I had absolutely no pain besides the normal lower back because of the weight I'm carrying, or the just the fatigued legs, but nothing abnormal. It's something we've all felt taking a pack test. Nothing abnormal at all. I actually thought I tripped on the foot of my buddy I was walking with. He turned out and said, "You all right?" I said, "Yeah, I think I just tripped on your leg." And so let me do this real quick. So I actually stood back up to continue, and I stuck my left leg out to walk, and I went right back to the ground. And then I knew something was wrong because I couldn't feel it. Then the feeling went away. And so I'm sitting there going, well, this just ain't right. And I'm sitting there, and there's no pain. I realize there's absolutely no pain. It's just a numbness is what I felt. I'm not saying there won't be pain in other people or other people haven't felt it. I felt nothing. So they did, we had 2 administrators. They had the ambulance there. The force I worked on was really good about the ambulance. Tons of helpers. So they continued the pack test. I was out of the way. I didn't want to stop it. That's why we had 2 of them. I said, keep doing it. Don't you dare stop it because everybody's finishing right about now, so don't even make them quit. They dealt with me. The ambulance people were there. They looked at me. They said, well, let's just take him to the hospital. It's 2 blocks away. Kind of a mess. It actually took, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes. By then, I started kind of zoning out in my mind because I remember getting to the hospital. I don't remember how long it took, but I'm thinking 20 minutes. Other people might know really what happened or how long it took. Get there. The doctor diagnosed me. He looks at me. They got me hooked up to machines. They're doing this. They're putting IVs in me. They're doing this. They're doing that. They're saying you're dehydrated. I'm like, well, I was sweating profusely the whole time. I know my body. I could have been a little dehydrated, but to be honest, I didn't feel that bad. I was sweating bullets like I always do, so I know I had something to sweat out. And I sat in the hospital. They kept, every 10 minutes, how I was doing. Then pretty soon my leg started hurting. If I say it didn't hurt before, I cannot describe the pain I felt about after 20, 30 minutes at the hospital. My leg, it felt like, I can't describe the pain. I really can't. I just know every time they ask me, does it hurt? I say, yeah. Give me a number 1 to 10. I'd say 100. It hurt. It hurt. And both my legs are hurting, but my left leg really. My right leg also hurt really bad, but not nearly as bad. I could actually tell the difference. And I think I was at the hospital a total of 3 or 4 hours, and they did EKGs on me. They thought I was dehydrated. They thought I had maybe a mild heart attack, which I actually laughed at him when he told me that. I said, I don't think so. And I understand you can be in denial when you have a heart attack. I've never experienced one. But I would honestly have said, if something hurt, I would say, yeah, it hurts pretty bad. But you know what? My heart was feeling pretty darn good at the time. My legs were killing me. And I told him, I said, you know what? My legs are really hurting. I'm wondering why you're around my chest area the whole time. But he was a doctor, so, he knew what he was doing. Well, I want to say about 3 o'clock, so I think the pack test started around 10 o'clock, 11. They finally released me, told me to come in the next day, or no, I'm sorry, next Tuesday, which was 6 days away, so I guess I took this on a Wednesday. It's coming next Tuesday to do another EKG. And I said, okay. And he said, just drink fluids and, go home. And so I want to say, I think and then it's kind of a cloud. This has been almost 2.5 years ago, but I think my wife took me home. We get there, and the pain is immense. I just can't explain how bad it felt. It was to the point I had to crawl up the stairs of my house on my my right knee and my two hands and pull myself up the stairs. And it hurt all night. I was pissing brown. And, you know, if I had half a brain back then, or what I know now, I would have realized right then something was wrong. But, you know, the doctor said you're dehydrated, you'll be fine, so I took him for his word. 3 in the morning, I mean, I didn't sleep. I think I slept 10 minutes that night. In fact, I think that's exactly what I slept. That whole night was 10 minutes. Wife took the kids to school. I'm at home, and finally I said, about noon, I said, you know, I better get back to the doctor. It just hurt. And that was, I mean, my right leg, I should say this, my right leg felt fine. It was absolutely back, it felt good. It was back to a normal leg. But I said, well, let's go back to the hospital. She goes, well, I got to leave in 40 minutes, pick up the kids off, I just drop you off, and I'll go get the kids. I said, sure. So I get there, and I was really lucky. The doctor had seen me the day before wasn't there, and they had a doctor that actually had done my DOT physical 2 days before I left for the last Texas assignment, was there, and he was actually detailed down there from Canada, if I'm not mistaken. Really good guy. He said, you know, I heard you had some problems. Yeah, you know, pissing brown, my leg hurts. He goes, well, really? Let me look at your leg. Took one look at it, and he said, okay, get Life Flight. He says, call Life Flight. We got to get him out of here now. And I think he'd seen this before. I never really got to talk to him after that. He basically, I'd never seen him again. Haven't seen him again in my life. But another long story short, both Life Flight helicopters are doing other missions, so they got me in an ambulance and zipped me down to Marshwood, Wisconsin, which is supposed to be a 4-hour drive. I think I got there in a little under 2.5 hours, 3 hours. I got there. They're waiting for me. I had to sign a quick piece of paper, and that's the last thing I remember until the next morning or next noon, after they'd done 3 surgeries on me that night. Basically, they cut my leg open on both sides. They had to cut a whole bunch of dead muscle out. They cut both sides to let there's so much muscle expansion still trying to happen that they needed all the space for it to go. So it was, I didn't get to see a picture, and I never want to, but they said my muscle was coming out both sides of my leg. I mean, I don't know how to explain it, but I didn't think nothing was wrong. I mean, I knew something was wrong, don't get me wrong. I just didn't think it was that serious until I looked at my leg when they took the sheet off of it, and I go, well, that doesn't look good. When your leg looks like a dead carp washed up on a beach, a whole bunch of, you know, it doesn't look good. It looked like a filet mignon. So I knew something was not going good. And to their credit, they told me only what they had to tell me. They weren't giving me the whole what they thought was going to happen, because I think I was on an official death watch, because they didn't think I was going to make it, and they never told me this. And if anybody out there knows me, they know what kind of person I am. I'm pretty much a happy-go-lucky kind of guy who always tries to find the silver lining when I can. And so I'm just laughing, joking, you know, talking to the nurses, just having a good time, like I try to make up every situation. And it hit home that Saturday after another surgery, and Saturday when the doctor came in and told me I was going to live. And I started laughing and said, well, I kind of expect to. He goes, no, you are going to live. Up to that moment, they were in doubt. That's why there's always somebody sitting by my bed. They always even had a preacher there, or a Catholic preacher there one day, and I thought he'd just come in and say hi, but he was there for quite a while, and I made small talk with him. But you know, I didn't really talk about that to many people because I didn't want anybody to get freaked out. But it was pretty serious, and basically, I stayed there 9 days, which sounds kind of funny because I started rehab on day 6. They said you're going to have to learn to walk with crutches the rest of your life, and you know, a cane and all this good stuff. And I was kind of joking about it. Yeah, okay, cool, whatever. I wasn't really. I know me well enough to know how I am and what I'm capable of, and so I basically was fit. I got to keep my leg too. Another day, I got told you you can keep your leg, and to have a doctor tell you that, saying, well, we think you can keep your leg, and then one day saying, yeah, pretty sure you can keep your leg, but not necessarily knowing for sure. It's an eye-opener. But by then, you know, once I got to the hospital, I never had pain in that leg again. I mean, even to this day, unless I bump a table or something, it feels fine. Now, I don't want to ramble on too much, but I was supposed to be, I got my handicap stickers and stuff, which I've never used. I got my permanent walking boots I was supposed to use the rest of my life. I got my crutches, my 2 other kind of orthopedic shoes I was supposed to use the rest of my life, and all this other stuff that I was supposed to do the rest of my life. And I am red-carded arduous again, and I'm pretty much normal. I did lose a tendon on top of my foot, so I have no upward foot mobility other than natural progressive swinging when you walk. But I just took the attitude that they didn't know me very well, and they were doom and glooming me, and I didn't accept it, and I kind of worked my way through it. But to get to try to hit the highlights of it, no pain when it happened, immense pain. I mean immense pain in the hospital until I got operated on. No pain afterwards. But they told me they took 33% of my muscle out of my leg, and I look at my leg now and I highly doubt if it was that much. Either that or a lot of my other muscle somehow regrew and got a lot bigger or something, because it's the hollow divots I used to have are gone, and it's actually feels like a full leg again. But it was quite the experience, and there was a picture of me with my leg. It's on the cover of my FLA where I had 13 metal pins in my leg with the big halo, and that was to keep everything from atrophying. They didn't want everything to break down, just dissolve or scooch. They want to keep all the muscle in place, because when this thing was in its peak 3 months afterwards, I could wrap my hand around my thigh. And everybody knows me, knows how big my legs are. When you can touch your thumbs and your pinkies on your big thigh muscle, that tells you what happened to my leg. But I'm sure there's going to be some questions, and I didn't tell the story very well, but the whole gist of it was I had a very busy fire year. I was all over the south, the east, and in Texas, and I didn't feel no pain at all until I was in the hospital and until I got operated on. When it actually happened, there was absolutely no pain. I thought I tripped over my buddy's foot. So, and I know some people get this and it's pain the whole time. I didn't feel it until I got to the hospital and laid around for a while. Then it started hurting. And I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of pain in life, but I've never felt anything like this. And I've also had a broken neck, so I've felt a lot of pain there too. But this thing was the worst thing I've ever felt. I wouldn't have minded if they had chopped my leg off, but thankfully they saved it. So I'm going to end on that, and if there's any questions, and I hope they give you my email, because I'll definitely can go in more detail or answer more questions later on if you want to. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dalen. That's good. So next up is Ben Jacobs.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Ben Jacobs. I'm the field specialist here at Sequoia-Kings Canyon National Parks, and I'm going to speak from a perspective of a supervisor, of someone who had a crew member go down with and was diagnosed as rhabdo. It happened on June 27th last year, 2013. During a PT run, we had a crew employee collapse and was medevac to a hospital in Fresno, California, where he was diagnosed with heat stroke and rhabdomyolysis. There is a lessons learned review was conducted, and the final report is on the lessons learned website, and I would encourage you to look at that for more details. One of the things that was interesting in this case was before the accident happened, the week before the employee graduated from college, he also went to a wedding the weekend before he came to work. So between those two events, he was up, late nights, imbibing beverages, things of that nature, not doing his normal PT. He was a very fit employee, a third-year employee, so he wasn't new to fire. When the employee showed up to work on Monday the 24th, the crew did PT, and later that day he did take the PAC test, so he got kind of double whammied there. He did indicate to his girlfriend that he wasn't feeling well the entire week, and he was having difficulty sleeping, but he didn't really let anything onto his supervisor, his direct supervisor, who works directly for me. So then I fast forward to that Thursday. The crew did a little project work on the 27th. In the afternoon, it was kind of warm down here in the foothill country. They went up to the mountains about 6,000 feet, and they did a 3-mile PT run. Temperature was estimated to be around 76 to 80 degrees. RH was around 60%. That's a pretty humid, muggy day for the Sierra Nevada mountains around here. During the run, the employee fell back from the run. He walked with his supervisor, walked with him for a bit, and then he appeared to get a second wind towards the end of the run. He actually sprinted the last portion, and then at that time he pretty much collapsed. They initiated a full medical response. They took it real seriously. Wasn't like shake it off, you're okay, but they had a very timely and efficient medical response, which definitely saved the employee's life, as it turned out in hindsight, and he was transported to Fresno, California. When we were notified down here, when I was notified at headquarters, my initial thought, we didn't have much information, and just in talking, well, it sounds like it might be a precautionary evacuation. You know, he collapsed, he's probably going to be fine, you know, maybe one night in the hospital or go home later that night, you know, drink some fluids kind of thing, similar to what Dalen was talking about. We found out later that night what the actual diagnosis was, and myself and my supervisor, the FMO, went to the hospital the next day, the next morning. At that time, the employee in the ICU, and he was hooked up to a breathing machine, and the nurses warned us right away, saying he's in really bad shape. And when I took one look at him, and it really rattled me on a real personal level, because I actually thought there's a good chance we're going to lose him. I mean, this was a shell of a person that I'd seen earlier that week. There were some other distractions starting to go on around that time. First and foremost was the Granite Mountain fatality, and we also, our hotshot crew, it also assisted with saving a life on a fire in Colorado of a neighboring crew who a lot of us know. So there's a lot of kind of between all this, people were just really rattled, and I think feeling pretty out of sorts. As a supervisor, probably the most important things from our perspective, my perspective, was one, we need to obviously take care of the employee, and almost as important, we need to take care of the employee's family, and also we need to take care of his crew, because people were in kind of shell-shocked. So what we did, we immediately established a family liaison, which was myself, and that pretty much included daily visits to the hospital. And I was at the hospital so much, I actually overnighted in Fresno probably at least 2 nights, and was in constant contact pretty much face-to-face with the family throughout every day, all day for quite a while. He was in ICU for 6 days before he finally came out of critical condition. Fortunately, the family was local to Fresno, so they actually could go home at night. It would have been even a probably more intensive involvement if the family had flown in from out of town and, you know, were staying in hotels, that type of thing. So we were kind of lucky there. As far as, so we took care of the family, I thought, pretty well. The feedback was that they were pleased with the park's level of concern and our response. We also then we set up a critical incident stress debriefing for the crew, but we allowed the crew government time, work time, to go to the hospital the next day just to spend time, even though they kind of could go in a couple at a time, and he wasn't. The individual wasn't really conscious, but hopefully they could kind of just talk to him and tell him they were there pulling for him, that type of thing. And then within about 3 days or 4 days, we did a critical stress debriefing, which I really felt it helped me personally, and I think it helped the crew. A lot of firefighters, we tend to kind of clam up sometimes and not really talk, but these guys they were all talking, and they were all really kind of letting out what they're feeling on it, and that was kind of powerful to see. Then we followed through with the employee and the family for the duration of the fire season. As I said, the employee spent 6 days in critical condition. He was in the hospital for 2 weeks total before he was finally released. He lost about 35 pounds. He was on dialysis for 7 weeks. But he was able to return to work later that year in only a light-duty capacity. But we made sure we found work for him that he could go and work around his dialysis schedule or any kind of a rehabilitation schedule, and made sure we had work until the seasonals got laid off that year. So again, from a supervisory standpoint, it's pretty obvious stuff. It's not rocket science, but just make sure you take care of the employee, you take care of the family, and then you also take care of the crew and make sure everybody's in pretty good shape. And that's all I got. I guess we'll have questions for afterwards, so I'll turn it over to Jennifer.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to talk about all of these illnesses or diseases. We're going to go over the definitions and talk about the symptoms, the risks, and the treatment. And there seems to be some confusion over the last year about what rhabdomyolysis and compartment syndrome are. And hopefully I'll clear that up in this webinar as well. These three diagnoses can occur by themselves, two in combination, or all three together. The outcomes can range from complete recovery to death for all of these diagnoses, with the exception you will not die from heat rash and heat exhaustion. You should recover from a heat rash without any complications. Other possible outcomes for the rest of the diagnoses are kidney failure with the need for a kidney transplant, loss of muscle or a limb with permanent disfigurement and disability, or brain damage from heat stroke.
Jennifer, can I interrupt you for just 1 second?
Go ahead.
I think your volume is down real low, or you're away from the microphone. It's hard to hear you.
How about now?
Yeah, a little bit better.
Let's see.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
That's okay. So first we're going to talk about exertional heat illness. It's the result of a body's intolerance to exertional heat or that produced internally by work or exercise. This ranges from heat rash and heat cramps to heat exhaustion to heat stroke. With heat exhaustion, the body starts to have a difficult time regulating its temperature and heart rate. But with heat stroke, the body can't regulate its temperature and heart rate response to the heat at all. Because of the metabolic changes that occur in moderate to severe heat exhaustion and heat stroke, you can get rhabdomyolysis that, if left untreated long enough, can progress to compartment syndrome, thus having two or all three diagnoses together. Mild symptoms, which are mild heat exhaustion, heat rash, or heat cramps, are cramping, nausea, thirst, headache, swelling of the hands and feet, or itchy red rash. Firefighters tend to normalize these symptoms, pushing them into the normal feelings of fighting fire, and they don't pay too much attention to them. So as supervisors, you may not hear much of these complaints. And we need to start making note of these symptoms, though, in order to know when a crew member is starting to worsen. Moderate symptoms, which is moderate to severe heat exhaustion, include nausea and vomiting, worsening headache, lightheadedness, low-grade fever below 102, rapid heartbeat at rest, and sweating, but normal mental status. So they're talking normal, they're not making, they are making sense, they're acting normal. That's normal mental status. If it's just a worsening headache and sweating, treatment is similar to mild symptoms. But if the rest of the symptoms are present, the treatment for moderate to severe symptoms needs to occur, as things can go bad fairly quickly. And we'll talk about treatment in a couple of slides. Severe symptoms, which is heat stroke, include fever above 104, altered mental status, or unconscious. So they're not making sense when they're talking. They're doing things that are not normal. Seizures, rapid heartbeat, and rapid breathing, which is your body's response to the metabolic changes occurring because of the heat illness. Low blood pressure, and the person may or may not be sweating. Cardiac arrest, in other words, a heart attack, is possible at this point. And at this point, things can go very bad within minutes. Your risks for exertional heat illness include poor aerobic physical conditioning and poor acclimation, excessive exertion, illegal drugs, or illegal in regards to marijuana, depending on where you live, some medications, burns, including sunburns, fatigue or lack of sleep, alcohol, excessive caffeine, energy drinks, herbal stimulants such as guarana or ephedra, And Major League Baseball teams have banned all of these legal stimulants, as well as the military strongly discourages their use. Other risks are heart disease, prior heat illness, history of malignant hyperthermia, which is a potentially fatal inherited disorder usually associated with the administration of certain general anesthetics and or the drug succinylcholine, sickle cell trait disease, and certain muscle disorders. So treatment for mild to moderate symptoms is removal from the heat, rest, oral hydration, including sports drinks, and antihistamines for the itchy rash. The treatment for moderate to severe symptoms usually requires hospital admission, IV fluid replacement, medications to correct electrolyte imbalance, which is usually present, medications for seizures if present, and active cooling with ice packs, immersion in cold water, or water spray and banning. So, rhabdomyolysis. This is the gradual or rapid onset of muscle inflammation that causes damage or death of the muscle. The damaged tissue gives off fluids that can build up, creating compartment syndrome. The breakdown of the muscle sends proteins through the blood to the kidneys. It clogs the kidneys up, decreasing their function and potentially causing them to fail. Symptoms are muscle pain you would not expect from the activity you are or were doing, and usually without cramps, as well as darker urine than normal, that may be brown to reddish brown in color, and we call that Coca-Cola urine. You might get some swelling of the affected leg or arm as well, but it's not an absolute. Your risks for this include high intensity, long duration activity, heat illness, low fitness level, trauma, sickle cell trait and disease, metabolic muscle disease, family history of malignant hyperthermia, which we talked about earlier, or rhabdomyolysis, as well as personal history of malignant hyperthermia, compartment syndrome, illegal drugs again, or legal in regards to marijuana, depending on where you live, and some medications, such as steroids and cholesterol medications, for example.
Jennifer, this...
Supplements such as creatine. Sure.
Jennifer, just real quick, I'm getting lots of messages that people are having a hard time hearing you, so if you can lean in closer to the microphone.
It's like right on my lips.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess everybody else turn your volume up, I guess, maybe be the on the opposite end. Okay, go ahead, sorry.
That's okay. Let's see here. The steroids and cholesterol medications, dietary supplements such as creatine, infections, and insect and snake bites are also the risks. So your treatment is hospital admission and IV fluids, medications to correct the electrolyte imbalance if present, sometimes kidney dialysis if not caught early, which may eventually require a kidney transplant, and possibly surgery to debride dead muscle tissue. So compartment syndrome. The muscles of the arms and legs are divided into compartments enclosed by a tissue that does not give. So with compartment syndrome, it's the increased pressure in one of those closed tissue spaces that causes compromised blood flow, causing tissue death if left too long, which will include muscles, nerves, blood vessels, and sometimes bone. This pressure can be created by gas-creating infections such as gangrene, external pressure of something lying on or against the limb, or increased fluid collection with a very large hematoma or blood collection. If rhabdomyolysis did not cause the compartment syndrome, the compartment syndrome can cause rhabdomyolysis as the muscle becomes inflamed and breaks down as it is dying. Symptoms include muscle pain that does not get better at rest, increasing pain in the affected area, especially with active or passive movement. Passive movement is you're not actively using your muscles to move that limb. Someone else is moving it or you're moving it with your other hand. Swelling of the affected area. Numbness, not necessarily in the affected area, but can be further down the same arm or leg. So if it's the thigh that you're having the compartment syndrome in, you can have numbness in the lower leg. Or if it's in the lower leg, it might be the foot. And the area further down from the affected area can become pale or purplish in color. Your risks include compression by an outside force, which could be caused by compression stockings or ace wraps that are used incorrectly. The ER most commonly sees this in someone drunk who's passed out in the tub with their leg hanging over the edge all night. All of these could cause prevention of venous return of the blood to the heart, and so you get pooling of the blood in the affected limb. Other risks are increase in volume of fluid within the space, such as a hematoma, which is a very large bruise from trauma. So examples of that would be a blow to the body or a fracture. Or you can get swelling from rhabdomyolysis as the inflammation and breakdown of the muscle creates fluid. And then the last risk is excessive exertion. Treatment includes hospital admission, fasciotomy, which is the picture up top. And it's an incision into the muscle compartment to relieve the pressure, like Dale talked about, and possible debridement of dead muscle tissue. And then that bottom picture is a picture of Dylan's leg in the halo that he was talking about. You also need IV fluids if rhabdomyolysis is present, and that can lead to the need for dialysis and potentially a kidney transplant. And hopefully we prevent the need for that.
Okay. All right, thanks, Jennifer, and thanks to all the presenters on that. That was, I think that those all fit well together. I think that was a really interesting coverage of the topic. Let's go to the questions now. And here, I'll start working my way down the list. First up, let me see. I'm sorry. Hold on one second. Let me bring my questions up. And I believe this question is probably for Dalen. And this is from Dennis Devaki. And he says, do you think the rhabdo had gone on for a while before it presented itself during the PAC test?
That's a good question. Hi, Dennis. I am not sure. I will tell you this. I've suffered from shin splints very badly during the PAC test, and that's the only time I ever got them. I've never had, and I played, I was a football player. I did a lot of athletic stuff, basketball, baseball. I did all of it. Actually turned down college football scholarships to go into the Air Force. Never experienced nothing like this in my life. And, just looking at Jennifer's little presentation about the wraps, I want to emphasize I do wear wraps. I've worn them 7 years before this happened, and the shin wraps were just tight enough where they wouldn't slip. They weren't like bone tight. I'm not saying that was a contributing factor or was not. I'm just telling you, I don't want you to think I was tightening those things up as hard as I could to get them. They were just on just enough to not slip during the thing, and they were for warmth, really. I'm not a runner, never really was. I hiked a lot, firefighting and hunting and all that good stuff. Never experienced nothing like this before. However, with shin splints, I'm thinking that might have something to do with some of this. I don't know why. Maybe I'm wrong. But just talking to other people, it seems like shin splints is somewhat, and I think Jennifer could really answer that a little better, but it's probably a mini compartment syndrome, a mini something. Like I said, this is the first time I have ever experienced this much pain in my life, and legs are one of my strong points. Some reason it just happened. I don't think it happened before that. I've never had it where I had just rock solid calf muscles like I did that day, and I used to do a lot of calf lifting. When I was a weightlifter, I did a lot of calf stuff, and I'm not saying I had it before, I didn't have it before. I just never experienced what I experienced that day. I hope I answered your question.
Okay, thanks, Dalen. The next question's from Todd Miranda, and he asks why the seemingly sudden increase in rhabdo. Jennifer, you want to take that one?
Sure. I don't know that we really truly know why the sudden increase in rhabdo. You know, there's nothing that's really changed with what the firefighters do at this point, and so you have to question, so what has changed within the last 5, 10 years that's external to what the firefighter does? And all the studies in the military, which is where most of the studies on these issues occur, really have not come down to a specific answer on that. They really, like I said, they pretty much strongly discourage, since they can't truly really ban the energy drinks and the legal stimulant drinks type thing. But I know that's one thing that they really focus on, that they question if that's not the cause. And I know that our firefighters drink those excessively. So it's not really a dehydration issue. A lot of our injuries that we've had, the blood work has shown that they were hydrated, they were not dehydrated. So I don't have a perfect answer for that, but I know it's been looked at, and I don't know if we will find a definite answer for that.
Jennifer, did you say that they looked at the stimulant drinks? You're talking about like Red Bull and Monster and that sort of thing. And
Exactly.
What did they find? I didn't quite catch that.
They haven't come to a specific conclusion. They know that that's one of the new things. You know, we didn't have that one 20 years ago. That stuff wasn't out. Within the last 10, 15 years, it's been out, and that's kind of when we've seen the increase in these incidences. And so they really question whether that is the cause, but they can't come to a definite conclusion on it.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay. Next
Can
question.
I add on that?
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead.
Yeah, again, I'm not a medical person, but I know when this happened to me, I started reading about it extensively. I talked to people, and I'm seeing another common denominator is why you're asking why has this been prevalent the last few years more than it has been? I think there's a lot to be said about misdiagnosis. As soon as this happened, I got an email from my buddy out in Oregon who runs a crew and has been a shop for years, and he actually knows a seasonal that had this happen to her on his crew. They had no idea it was. She basically went through it, not to the extent I did and some of us that are kind of in the FLA world did, but to the point she resigned her seasonal position and went on, did her things in life. The doctor I had absolutely no clue. Like I said, they hardly looked at my leg. I basically told him, look at my effing leg, it hurts. He looked down, he looked at it, said, looked at me, you're dehydrated, and went right back to putting EKG stuff on my chest and listen to my heart and stuff. He just absolutely had no clue what it was. I know it's happened a couple other times where the doctors just didn't know what it was, and so I'm not sure if it's, I do believe it's more prevalent because, you know, I never heard of this happening, but I do think there's something to be said about misdiagnosis in the past too.
Right.
Just want to say that.
Okay.
Galen, I agree with you that it's been a misdiagnosis. There are ER docs that can go their entire life of practice and never see one of these diagnoses. And there are others that they see it routinely, and so they know immediately as soon as they see it walk in the door type thing. And so that's where the misdiagnoses are coming from, is that, you know, you've got these ER docs that, even orthopedists, like your Compartment Syndrome, that's mainly an orthopedic disease. And there's orthopedists out there that have never seen that diagnosis in their life. So these diagnoses are
Exactly.
frequent enough, but they're not so frequent that everybody sees them.
Yeah, you said that absolutely perfect. The small town I was in, they had no clue. They know now, trust me, they know now, but they had no clue. The other person that I kind of helped from the Twain, small town, no idea what was going on. I mean, you're absolutely right. And the gentleman that worked for Ben was lucky. I'm going to say lucky because he went to Fresno, and that's a good-sized city. They knew exactly, or had a darn good clue what it was when they first seen him. I was lucky the second day to get a guy from Canada who was from a bigger hospital up there, and he pretty much knew exactly what was going on. If I would have seen the same doctor or another doctor in that hospital, I wouldn't be here today, because I was told later none of the doctors in that little hospital, in that little town, had a clue what was going on. So I was very lucky in a lot of ways.
Okay. Anybody else want to speak to that one? Okay. Next question is from Wade Tate, and this is for Ben Jacobs. He says, can you recall in more detail the signs or symptoms present when the employee collapsed? In other words, the level of consciousness, heart rate, etc.?
Yeah, this is Ben. He was definitely, the employee did not really remember much of what happened. He related later. He remembers being on the run, but he doesn't remember to what happened after the run. He collapsed. They kind of set him down. He would kind of come in and out of coherency. They knew kind of something was up right away. At one point, they thought, they were giving him water, that type of stuff, and they actually thought he was starting to come out of it at one point, but then he kind of lapsed back into sort of a altered state of consciousness, so to speak, that type of thing. I don't recall how much he was sweating. I do believe he was still sweating. The indicators were not of a heat stroke, more of a lower level heat stress, heat exhaustion type of injury. I think we were all caught off guard when he was actually diagnosed with heat stroke. I believe his core temperature was either 105 or 106, somewhere right around there when they got him to the hospital. So he was in really, really serious condition. But kind of like Dalen, he didn't have the indicators that really indicated the severity of the injury. And plus, he was a fit employee. He had a history of really strong fitness. So we just didn't, nobody expected it to be as bad as it was. And I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. It's interesting, both of those, or at least just in this case, the two incidents that we're talking about are from training, really. Next question is from Stacy Sass, and she says, when planning for medical emergencies on the fire line, what recommendations are there? Emergency medical contacts for family, or having FFTs fill out an emergency information sheet before the season? That's probably for Ben as well.
Yeah, I can take that. In response to the incident, both the incident of the Rhabdo and also what happened with the hotshot crew member that the Arrowhead and Horseshoe crews, actually had to revive this guy on the fire line. We all our employees now, we require some kind of emergency contact in the event of serious injury or death, and with specific instructions. Kind of came out of one of the Two More Chains issue from the Lessons Learned Center, where the surviving gal of Prineville Hotshots talked about the South Canyon experience. We since that time have put together a form, or used an existing form to provide those specific instructions. Who to call first. Don't call my parents, call my sister, or that type of information, the seasonals and the permanent employees. And that we're all on file with our dispatch office at the headquarters here, our fire dispatch, as well as supervisors keep copies. And I actually keep a copy of my personal one in my vehicle glove box in case something happens to me and people happen to find it. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, yeah, I think that does. Next question is from Todd Miranda, and I believe this one's for Jennifer. And he asks, could you clarify the link between Rhabdo and Compartment Syndrome?
Okay, so rhabdomyolysis in itself is damaged muscle tissue, and if it is left long enough without being watched carefully, and it progresses, the fluids that damaged muscle tissue gives off can build up within the compartment of whatever limb it's in. And that in itself can create compartment syndrome, because that buildup of fluid, as it builds up more and more, it's going to create increased pressure and cut off that blood supply. On the other side of the fence, Compartment syndrome is that buildup of pressure within that compartment, and if you've got that buildup of pressure, you're going to cut off the blood supply to the muscle, and the muscle is going to die, and so the compartment syndrome can create rhabdomyolysis. So each one can cause the other, basically.
Okay. Next question is from Jennifer also, and this is from Mike Malassi. What does the introduction of antihistamines do in the treatment of heat illness?
The antihistamines is mainly for the heat rash. So if you've got the itchy red rash, the heat rash, the antihistamines is for the rash. That's it.
Okay. This question's from Oscar Knudsen, and I believe this was covered, but maybe we can reiterate it. But it's, any way to prevent rhabdo? Maybe for Joe on that one?
Yeah, when we go back to Jennifer's slides on those risk factors, if you can minimize those, you're going to decrease your chances for getting rhabdo. However, they've not actually found a direct cause of rhabdo. So the best we can do right now is just minimize those risk factors, and hopefully that will decrease our chance of getting rhabdo.
Okay. And Cynthia Cirkfear wants a little bit of clarification on the link between energy drinks and these illnesses. What is it about those energy drinks that's causing the problems?
Well, the energy drinks themselves, they increase your blood pressure, they increase your heart rate. So in heat illness, you are not going to be able to respond to heat as well because your heart rate's already going to be elevated, your blood pressure's already going to be elevated. It also constricts blood vessels. The caffeine and the stimulant in it constricts your blood vessels. So you can't, those blood vessels cannot dilate to give off heat. The constricted blood vessels then can cause decreased blood supply to those muscles as they're being used excessively. So you're not getting the blood supply to the muscle that you need to get the nutrients and the oxygen that it needs. And then in turn you end up with the rhabdomyolysis or the heat illness, basically.
Okay. Joaquin Marquez asks, is dark urine something that can be used as an early indicator, or is it something that occurs during the more advanced to late stages? Is this something that should be a key indicator of an onset?
Yeah, definitely a key indicator. If you've got it, you need seeing right away. And it can occur either early in the disease or later on. So it's not a definite as far as the timing. But if you've got dark urine, you've got that Coca-Cola urine, you definitely want to be checked out.
Okay. Jason Lamberth asks, a lot of employees today are exercising with CrossFit. Is the number of rhabdo illnesses increasing within our agency due to this? You know, is there any link there with CrossFit?
This is Joe, and right now, kind of, CrossFit has been linked with rhabdo. Again, it can happen during any sort of workout. CrossFit workouts are designed to be very intense, very short, and one of the risk factors for rhabdo is intense exercise. So I'm not sure if it's the CrossFit that is actually doing it. There's other exercise programs out there that use that same mentality that have kind of similar results. I think it's more just that high intensity exercise repeated time and time again. The other issue with rhabdo is when you do exercises that your body's not used to doing. So if you train with some sort of high intensity short duration workout and then go to a wildland firefighter setting where you're doing a more long duration task with weight bearing activity, you're now using the muscles in a way they haven't trained for, which may not seem like a very intense activity, but to those muscles, they haven't trained that way, it's very intense. So when you look at training plans, you want to make it as specific to the job as you can. And so that's kind of the best answer I can give on that topic right now.
Okay. Todd Miranda asks, how long before CK shows up in the blood work? Can't remember.
As soon as you got...
What does CK refer to? I'm sorry.
As soon as you have muscle damage, CK is creatine kinase. It's a protein in the blood.
Right.
And so the reason why, in Dalen's instance, they were looking at his heart is because CK is released when you have a heart attack. And so that was probably their normal thought process. You got CK in the blood, you had a heart attack. But CK is released anytime you got a damage to a muscle. And so it's released fairly quickly, within hours.
Okay.
Can I elaborate on that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was told by one of my doctors that normal CK, I hate to say that, but when you have a fatal or really intense heart attack, your CK level is 6,000 to 7,000. My highest number was 111,000. It's never been documented that high in somebody that lived. So it got really intense for 2 hours. That's maybe why I was having a lot of company in the hospital. But Jennifer's exactly right. And that's probably why now, in hindsight, why they were concentrating on my upper body and not my legs. Heart felt fine. I mean, I wasn't breathing hard. I was in the hospital just chillaxing with a leg that felt like it was wanting to blow up. But CK got really high. And if you have anybody ever goes through this, you need to get your blood checked. I just got mine checked again. Kidneys are fine. Everything's fine right now. They told me to get a little more exercise, get my good cholesterol, but my kidneys are fine, which, considering what I went through, is kind of amazing. I just hope they don't fail somewhere down the road, but there's always a possibility. But that's a very good question from Todd. Yeah, my CKs are really high, and that's a good question.
Okay. Yeah, the next one is from Jack Novacell, and he says, could there be correlation between alcohol or coffee/caffeine consumption prior to assignments or /pack test on the onset of some of this?
It's definitely a possibility.
I'll answer this real quick.
Good, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I just want to state for everybody, and I should have stated this, I don't drink alcohol, I don't do coffee. I do drink pop, which has a lot of caffeine, but I should have stated this, I'm a very, very casual alcohol drinker, under 24 a year. I don't drink coffee maybe twice a year. I do drink a little bit of pop, but that's just coming from my personal way I am. So, but Jennifer can give you that correlation between the medical and this.
Yeah, the alcohol and caffeine are potentially a risk factor. How high on the risk factor scale, that part I can't tell you. But I know all the studies that you read and everything that's listed as one of your risk factors, basically. So it's definitely a possibility.
Okay. Michelle Ellis has a comment and then a question. She says that the link between hydration, diet, and the situation. We tell our folks that Red Bull and Doritos are not the breakfast of champions. And then she also wants to know if there's any age group trends. Is this something that affects younger people more or older people more?
I can't say I've seen anything in regards to age. Have you, Joe?
I have not, no. So, yeah, I guess anybody's as at risk as anybody else.
Okay. Kevin Ogden wants to know if there's a final report on this. Is there any good reference materials out there on these?
I would say for reports, the Lessons Learned Center has multiple reports from rhabdo cases and heat illness cases where a lot of this information is presented. And then I think using this presentation, Jennifer's slides for the risk factors and treatments was probably the best source right now.
Okay. Dan Benson asks, he says, compression socks and sleeves are a big thing among athletes for quicker recovery and better blood flow during training competition. Should this practice be discouraged during pack testing?
Good question. I don't know that there's anything definitely stating a yes or a no to this. You know, compression stockings come in different gauges or different strengths of compression. And so, you know, I would definitely say if you're using the strongest ones that are out there, that's probably not the smartest thing to do. If you're using, you know, just the minimum that's out there, I can't give you a definite answer on that one because it just, there's nothing saying yes or no.
Okay. Derek Hartman, and this question is for Jennifer also. What is the most effective intervention in a line EMT / paramedic can provide other than rapid evac?
Oh, for all three? Heat illness, the biggest thing, cool them off. Cool them off, cool them off, cool them off. Get them cold. Rhabdo and Compartment Syndrome, those are both hospital treatment. So the biggest thing is get them out of where they're at and get them to definitive medical care.
Okay. Bruce Hicks, this question is from Bruce Hicks. He says, we know antihistamine use contributes to heat-related illness. Were antihistamines a contributory factor in either of these two cases?
I have taken antihistamines in the past. I'm actually on a under-tongue allergy treatment now, but I don't believe I took any that time of the year. I mostly have to do it in the springtime with hay fever and stuff, but no, I very rarely took them that year or that time of the year, at least in my case.
Yeah, hi, this is Ben. Our employee had been taking ibuprofen that week, but I don't remember him taking any antihistamine.
Okay. Next question from Eric Graff, and he says, when providing care for rhabdo with compartment syndrome, how much fluid would recommend on for a bolus and maintenance dose? Try not to increase the fluid in the affected limb, but begin to flush the kidneys. I'm guessing that one's for Jennifer.
You know, if you're the line EMT, I would say I would, at this point, if you're the one starting the IV, I wouldn't worry about how much fluid is going to be second spaced within that leg. I'd put it on wide open.
Okay. All right, this is from Jim Houston. Are incident medical units given any kind of guidance that any employee being transported for heat-related illness be tested for rhabdo as a standard to avoid misdiagnosis? Or is this something that, you know, people are becoming more aware of?
I would say, you know, the medical unit leaders are becoming much more aware of it. There is a information sheet for the physician that can be handed to them, printed off and handed to them on the Forest Service website, and I know there's one on the NWCG website as well. I don't know truly what instruction is being given to the med units on big camps at this point.
Okay. This is a comment from Sean Lubinetsky. He says, last fire season I was a sawyer on an IA hand crew. I got altitude sickness and rhabdo. After a detailed explanation of the timeline, everything happened and my vital signs throughout. Doctors agreed with the altitude sickness combined with extreme physical work caused the rhabdo. Okay. And I believe this question is for Joe from Joaquin Marquez. He Is there any link to having too much water available that flushes the system, similar to hyperkalemia? Any link to having Camelback's constant water supply in recent years?
I have not seen any link in the literature for that. If you look at other occupations for hydration status and maintaining hydration, they say easy access to fluids increases drinking and therefore better maintains hydration status in these kind of arduous environments, but there hasn't been any link or any research looking at the constant access to fluids and these illnesses. No, not that I've seen.
Okay. I didn't see this, but Sean Lubinetsky's comment was continued down below, and he asked, has anyone looked at altitude sickness with rhabdo? I was constantly asked about energy drinks, soda, and coffee. I don't drink energy drinks or coffee and very little soda. So any connection between altitude sickness?
I was in Texas and went back to Wisconsin. I was pretty low elevation, so for me, it definitely did not correlate.
Core acclimation is one of the risk factors for some of these diseases. So, you know, that altitude sickness, you weren't acclimated well enough that you got altitude sickness. So yeah, it's potentially a cause.
Yeah, they're getting lots of comments that people can't hear you, Jennifer, but you know, it's muffled on my end, but it's not bad. And one thing I would say is that the recording might be better, where you know the audio might be a little bit better on the recording. So if you're having trouble, maybe check out the recording. Todd Miranda, he asks, would eye stats in camp help rule out or in rhabdo quickly? Is that something that the med unit leaders could have in camp?
Well, I guess the iStat, you know, is a very quick, you know, you can use it for blood tests of different things and different chemicals in the blood. But I think that the key with that is you might not have any of the early signs of rhabdo showing up in the blood yet. So somebody might come in, have, you know, an iStat blood test done very quickly and not be out of the norms. And then go back to work, and then maybe it shows up a couple of hours later, or potentially you could have some false positives. So potentially it's there, but I'm just not sure how beneficial it'd be right now.
Okay. Richard Johnson asked, you mentioned caffeine and alcohol. What about sugar?
I haven't seen any link.
Sugar
Go ahead, Joe. I think you guys.
I haven't seen any. Yeah, I haven't seen any link to sugar or carbohydrates.
And Jennifer, you heard anything about that?
No, I agree. I haven't seen anything.
Okay. Wade Tate asks, he says there's apparently never been a documented case of rhabdo in a female. That's not correct, is it? Is that, or there has been? I'm guessing.
There has been in the military. There's been documented cases in females. However, males have a higher incidence rate than females do.
Okay. Scott McCreary says, so just for clarification, dark urine is a possible sign of rhabdo, but does not always mean you have rhabdo. What other issues can be a sign associated with dark urine?
Anytime you've got inflammation of the kidney, you can get dark urine because it's basically blood that's in the urine. And so it's mainly kidney disease, which, you know, rhabdo is causing a kidney situation, basically. So other than kidney diseases, as well as the rhabdomyolysis, those are the only things I know of that are going to give you the Coca-Cola.
Okay.
I'll tell you something real quick. I had dark urine one time after this happened. It would have been probably a year and a couple months later, it was right around the college football bowl season, and I had dark urine a little bit, and I freaked out and got on Facebook right away and talked to a friend of mine who was a nurse, and she asked me if I'd eaten any kind of food I hadn't had in a long time or I never had, and I actually, for the first time in 2.5, 3 years, had tuna fish out of a can, and she told me to go drink a 40-ouncer of regular beer and see if that flushed it, and if I still had colored urine. And maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but I did that, and it cleared up, and I haven't had it since, but I did freak, and that's why I still get my blood tested to see how my kidneys are doing, and they've been fine ever since. But that's one time where I thought I was having a relapse, and I freaked out. So I ate something I hadn't had in years, and it caused my urine to turn kind of a lighter, not quite dark, but a decent brown.
Okay. Sean Lubinetsky's comment is continuing, and that this goes back to the acclimation point that Jennifer made. And I'm sorry, Sean, that I haven't gotten this all at one time. I'm sort of scrolling down, and I keep picking them up as you add to it. But he explains why he got altitude sickness. He says, I live at about 400 feet, and within 2 days I was put to work at 7,000 feet doing Sawyer work in high heat on burning ground. I got leg cramps and finally legs locked until I got a second wind to hike down. As the altitude changed, my vitals changed. Okay. Question from Eric Graff for Jennifer. Any link between rhabdo and exertional hyponatremia?
I can't say that I know of one specifically. Usually hyponatremia is from drinking too much water, which is what we would typically see the cause of in the hospital. But I don't know of a causal relationship between rhabdo and hyponatremia.
Okay. There's Curtis Sandy has I'm not sure if this is a question or a comment, but he says liver disease with bilirubin. I'm not sure exactly what.
Oh, he's trying to say what else will cause the dark urine, which, yeah, I forgot about the liver.
Okay. Hold on one second. Ben, is there was another question that you wanted to answer? I'm not seeing it.
No, no.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all the questions I have. I want to thank the panel. I think that was a very the different perspectives on this really added to my understanding of this now. I have a much clearer understanding of what these problems are, and I have a good idea of what to look for. I think this is a really good way to talk about this topic. I want to thank all you guys for your time and putting it together for us. And I want to thank the audience for coming. We'll have the link to this up as quick as we can get it. Usually it takes an hour or two to get the recording uploaded onto YouTube, and the link will be posted on the Advances in Fire Practice again. So this will be a video file is what you'll get, and it'll be up in about an hour or two. All right, well, I want to thank everybody and look forward to seeing everybody next time. Thanks.